everyone. Hello, and welcome to the exhibit closing reception and the Ancestral release ceremony, or celebration, should I say, for Cathay Williams, the only known female Buffalo soldier and the chosen ancestor for us to celebrate on today. And by chosen, I mean while she is the reason for the celebration, as we journey together for the next 30 minutes or so, I will call upon you to quietly hold dear the name or names of your beautiful ancestors today. Because the significance of a traditional release ceremony is that not only are you honoring someone that you love that has recently transitioned, or not so recent in Cathay's case, but you have the opportunity to honor whatever they navigated in this life. And by virtue of doing that, you are engaging the past, but you're also engaging your own personal past. This is why I believe so strongly in the beauty and the power and the fervor and energy of history, of knowing the history. And this is why traditionally, historically, different movements, ideas, notions, concepts also borrow from history here and there as if they're gathering pieces for their movement. Certain movements will weaponize religion, history, culture, all the things, and then certain movements and concepts and ideas will take power, draw energy and beauty from that. So what we are seeking to do today is not just honoring the past and feeling fully present in the present, we're seeking to reclaim. As a woman of color, if I didn't embrace the practice of reclaiming, honey, there'd be nothing to celebrate. But not just in my own personal journey. We all have ancestors who navigated different planes and different energetic realms so that we would be here. And I believe that we are here for a reason, for a purpose, and that's still unfolding in our own personal journeys, right? But I also believe that it is no accident. This gathering, the people in this room, look around you, will never be in this room together again like this. So to quote my late grandfather, the Reverend E. Edward Jones, who transitioned 7 years ago, my chosen ancestor, I'm celebrating today along with Cathay. Breathe in that air, the air of love, the air of community, the air and the power of shared experiences. We know that we can go the distance moving forward from this afternoon on, and we can navigate any circumstance because we are the proof, we are living proof. We are physically here because our ancestors, who didn't even know our names, knew without a shadow of a doubt, or at the very least, hoped things would get better. So here we are walking now in this space, and in the midst of a war or wars, because there's always a war going on somewhere in the world, whether we're aware of it or not, and walking next to all the extraordinary humans who serve, of their own accord, or because of limited options, who serve with their whole heart. We are walking with them today in spirit, just as we are walking with Cathay. So for those who are unfamiliar with Cathay, originally born in Independence, Missouri, Cathay's life was quite extraordinary. And over the 2+ years or so that Cathay was seized as contraband, isn't that something? Human contraband. And traveled to different places. One of the things that Cathay identified was that now that slaves are free, in theory, in certain pockets of America, there were very few things for you to do. There was very little infrastructure. That's why so many people, particularly in the South where I'm from, went into sharecropping because there was nothing set up for them to do. So Cathay knew that I will, at the very least, be safer, not necessarily safe, but safer. I will have access to food and be able to make my own way if I go into the military. And she's actually quoted as saying in the St. Louis Daily Times that I didn't want to be a burden on friends and family. I wanted to make my own way. And how many of us in our own journeys in different parts of life, whether you have a partner or a spouse, except wherever you are in your journey, in your heart of hearts, you simply wanted to exist. You want to move, you want to be free, you want to have quality of life, to rest easy at night, and to not be a burden on those that you care for. I relate to Cathay in so many ways, and as I was researching her over the past 2.5 years, every nibble, every nugget, everything I found just made me that much closer to this human story. So when Cathay was, quote unquote, released from that servitude, she knew she had very few options. And she also knew that as a female, she would be unable to serve when presenting as a female. So Cathay inverted her name, William Cathay. And apparently they weren't doing very thorough searches at the time. So this amazing human who stood 5'9", which is quite tall for a woman in those days, served and traveled and did all the things. And upon researching the stops and the places Cathay served, whether she was serving with the military the first go-round, not of her own accord, or whether she was serving as a Buffalo soldier, I found it very interesting that Cathay went to New Orleans, which, honey, everybody was going to New Orleans, and I get it. But also, what struck me and really endeared me to her journey was Cathay was there for the rebel gunfire at the Red River in Shreveport. Now, for those who know their history, Shreveport is the last seat of the Confederacy. Shreveport just also happens to be my hometown, honey. And that should let you know kind of the energy that was there then. And there are still pockets of that energy across our country now. But what struck me was my childhood home is less than 10 minutes away from where Cathay walked. Where I lived and worked for years before moving to Colorado is in downtown Shreveport. And downtown Shreveport is literally about 30 paces from the Red River. So as I began to trace Cathay's journey, I was encouraged and just completely blown away by the notion that the places this person had gone, I too had been or were currently living. And it wasn't until this summer I was at my opening of a Denver show at McNichols. I ran to a friend of mine, Dexter, who used to be the curator at History Colorado. And he said, "You're in Trinidad now." I said, "Yes, I am serving as an artist in residence in Trinidad for about 9 months to a year." And then he jokingly said, "Are you following Cathay?" To which I, because I've been researching, that never came up for whatever reason in my research, I said, "What do you mean?" He laughed and said, "Cathay lived and worked in Trinidad, and Cathay transitioned, passed away in Trinidad. It's the last known place of her existence." Completely floored. Thank goodness I'd already given my artist talk because it just occupied my mind for the rest of the afternoon. That and the amazing quiche they had on the table. And I was just like, oh my goodness. I really went and told my husband, Sean, I said, "Can you believe it? Cathay lived in Trinidad. This is so exciting." And it really felt like I was supposed to carry this woman's story. And carry we are. Because once this beautiful exhibit closes here at the Trinidad History Museum, and thanks to Al and the amazing team here, Cathay will travel. And Cathay will go to 7 cities between now and February of next year. So it seems appropriate today, not just to honor the past of this extraordinary human, but to honor the present and the future. So for those who know, Cathay was encouraged to apply for her disability. She worked for a number of years, working as a laundress, working as a cook, doing all the things she could. She was a hard worker. And then she was encouraged to apply for her disability. She was denied. Not necessarily, I believe, on the grounds of posing as a gentleman, but I think also because she was a woman of color. And that denial of sorts, I believe, was multi-layered. How many of us have been in a situation in life where you received a no, and you may have been okay with what that no looked like on the surface, but it was the layers of the no that really just you felt in your spirit, you felt in your core. Or maybe it was a series of no's that came all at one time that caused you to withdraw, caused you to go in, to rethink who you were, to rethink what your purpose is. I believe in that situation that I fully believe Kathy had, that experience, that moment. We have an opportunity as humans to succumb or to take the time that we need to gather the tools and resources around us, to shore ourselves up, our hearts, our bodies, our energies, to go the distance. 9 months later, give or take, after Kathy received that news, she transitioned. There are many reports of where she may or may not be buried. But one thing that we have seen consistently in the research is that Kathy came to befriend the nuns. And after the stories that were printed in the paper and all the things that had gone on and the denial, all the no's, I fully believe in my heart that Kathy just wanted peace, wanted to be, and wanted to go home. So, as the granddaughter of a Baptist preacher, we grew up singing Negro spirituals. Negro spirituals came and rose to prominence during the same decades or so that Kathy began to transition. They are beautiful combinations of European hymns that were kind of rebirthed, reclaimed by enslaved Blacks, primarily in the South and the Southeast. And they were used for a myriad of ways. They were used, of course, to help people when navigating to safety, navigating by the North Star to freedom, or the version of freedom that you're gifted in that time, right? But also, they provided, many, many years later, a source of energy and comfort. So much so that when I was a little girl in worship and we sing Negro spirituals, I thought, good gracious, when is this almost over? When are we going to supper? When is this almost over? When can I see my cousins? Like all the things. And it wasn't until I was allowed to grow into adulthood and womanhood that I really identified just the power and the courage of the spirituals. Not just because of how they were used, but because of the words that were shared. So everyone, for the most part, is familiar with Amazing Grace. Yeah. So there are words in the second verse of Amazing Grace that I believe resonate very, very deeply. And I just want to take a few moments to hold space for those words today, because I believe they speak to Kathy's experience. And it goes, through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. Through many dangerous toils and snares, I have already come. Now, if you will, just breathe at your own pace. Close your eyes, please. Imagine being raised as an enslaved person. This is all that you know. Imagine someone coming with troops to seize your plantation and burn it to the ground, and you are now captured. Imagine traveling with a whole new group of people. New places, new spaces, new means of transport, new energies. The inconsistency of being by yourself or with a group of people at night, the black of night. Walking through water barefoot. Walking in the day on the hard, rocky ground, barefoot. Having to care for your personal needs in the heat of the summer and the wintry chill of the winter. Piecing together your existence, rising before dawn, going to bed long after the moon comforted you, only to be released to the new awareness that now they say you are free. Where's your family? Where are you going? What should you do? Are you safe? Are you supported? Feel around you. The air is thick. The energy is heavy, but there's a little bit of hope. Maybe you can chart your own way. And what will that look like? You gather your things, though limited in scope. You enlist. They accept you. You are pursuing now, for the next 2 or so years, a new identity that is required for you to survive. You are bundling up your things, you are sleeping at night, you are pitching tents, you are sharing meals, you are sharing company, you are falling ill on numerous occasions. Viruses, colds, all the things. You feel extreme pain in your lower back and your legs and your energy and the weight of your shoulders, but you keep going. Some tours you walk 500 steps. One day you feel a bout of sickness coming on, and you are also very, very aware that you are weary. You are weary, and you would like to go. You go to the infirmary. A doctor happens to do a thorough search. This is unfamiliar to you because this has never happened before. But in this thorough search, that doctor, that physician, that professional identifies that you were born female. And they know you. You're no stranger to them. And because you have served honorably, they do what is for many unthinkable. They release you and grant you an honorable discharge. And now the second phase of your life begins. You work in New Mexico. You walk up and down the Santa Fe Trail. You come to Colorado. You meet in Pueblo. You meet a gentleman. You think, now I will have this really beautiful hope of a future. I can build something here. You all have a place to stay. One day you wake up and all of your horses, your belongings, and your prized watch, which is no small feat to have jewelry in this time because it's viewed as a luxury, even more so than today, are gone. You've been robbed. And to your knowing, you were robbed by your spouse. You alert the authorities. You say, this is where I officially move on. And then you move from Pueblo to Trinidad, the last known place of your existence. You begin working here as a seamstress. You have a very skilled and beautiful hand. You're also a laundress. You're helping other newly freed persons get on their feet. You are a blessing to all who know you. And even though your health is in a diminished state, you find the courage every single morning in that beautiful Trinidad sun to keep going. You're encouraged to apply for your disability. You go and do all the things. I would assume you put on your best pair of shoes and you put on your morning jacket and you go. And with all the hope in your heart that you can piece together and muster, you walk into that space only for them to tell you that you are not worthy and that you will not be awarded, not in this season. And you cite actual incidents and situations of extraordinary women who are Caucasian, who have served in previous wars, who too posed, but also received their benefits, only for them to say the resounding sigh, not today. Not you, not today. And so you go back to Trinidad, and within 9 months to a year, you succumb. And you go home. Breathe deeply with me in this moment, at your own pace, and hold space for Cathay and this journey. And in this very moment, let's save room and create space to honor Cathay in a way that she was never honored in life. If there is no marker, and there is no known site for this woman, she has one today. We honor her today. This is her service. You are a part of that. And as you go forth today, every person you encounter, everything you do, and how you choose to show up moving forward, you honor Cathay and your ancestors. Think now of someone in your life who has transitioned, who had great meaning to you, that you often think of, talk to, smile, and remembering a joke or an exchange. Hold all of the space in your heart for them. And continue breathing at your own pace. Now feel in your own personal body, reflecting on your journey, reflecting on the parts of your journey that have been heavier than you would have liked, but that caused you and positioned you to make necessary choices. Honor that time now by breathing at your own pace. And if you feel from the very bottoms of your feet, allow the energy to move gently through your body, moving ever so slowly until it reaches the top of your head. And if you will give yourself permission to do so, I'd like for you to release 3 things in this moment. Release the thing that has been keeping you up at night, that has been heavy on your heart, that you know you directly have no control over. Release that thing and free yourself of that. And breathe at your own pace. Release the weight from what you know of what your ancestors endured, known and unknown. And honor them for having the courage to go and gently place one foot in front of the other in this moment. Release the weight of Cathay and Cathay's story, of having to hide and move and grow, and think of all the ancestors that had to hide and move and shift energy just to exist. Release that now and replace it with warm energy of acceptance, of joy, of hope. And as we breathe gently and gently open our eyes in this moment, I want you to give yourself permission to move from this space today with a new awareness of how beautiful and extraordinary you are, and how every circumstance that you've navigated and your ancestors have navigated has positioned you to go the very next step. This is a reclaiming. It has been a joy to share with you all today. The reason we chose October 14th is because it was the day that Cathay was discharged. It was a setting free of sorts. So today we release and we free Cathay. We free Cathay to go home, whatever that means to all of us. As you come by, you're welcome to enjoy the exhibit. What we'll do is a sweeping movement. I'll just briefly explain the significance of it, and then we'll conclude. I'll be available for any questions. And I just want to thank you again for your energy and time today. It's been so beautiful sharing with you. So on the left-hand side, this is a constructed collage that is meant to represent children, all the children, particularly enslaved children. We have small burlap trousers that I made. I think oftentimes when people think of slavery, they think of adults, and that's heavy enough. But do you often think about the children? Because as early as 2 years of age, depending on the type of plantation and the type of crop, sugar, rice, mothers were giving birth, the little ones were put to work, working in squalor and really heavy conditions. So to reach adulthood was no easy feat. The average slave typically transitioned between the later 20s. If you were in your 30s as a slave, that was something quite extraordinary. So these are for all the beautiful children, and these are also for Cathay, the pants that she would wear in the future on her journey that carried her. The netting is consistent in my work. The netting always represents the constraints around us, perceived and real. Sometimes it feels so, so real. And then sometimes when you give yourself distance from a situation, you recognize that we create these things ourselves, and we can gently, lovingly shift energy to find our own version of freedom. Also the nets on the slave ships as well. We have the signage. Everywhere you see, there are beautiful bouquets of flowers, bound and unbound, that were lovingly collected by us and dear friends to honor Cathay, a way of giving her her flowers, so to speak. You also see open vessels, 2 or 3 open vessels, meant to represent the space that is yet to be filled, the promise of the future if you do the work to release. The dress that was created for the show. This dress took me about 3 months to create. It is, I believe, 41 burlap sacks, small planter sacks. So when I started this, I wanted to use burlap, which is consistent in my work, because for those who are unfamiliar, oh, by the way, I'm Chloe Duplessis. I'm a legally blind artist and historian. So I'm gradually losing my vision. I have a genetic condition. So I've moved from doing photography and digital to focusing on fiber, because I've developed a system based upon the ends of my fingertips that allow me to still create art and show up in this season, right? Some things you don't bargain for, but how you approach it and embrace it is everything. So we're choosing to reclaim vision loss as not as a stumbling block, but as a springboard for new areas for creativity and community. And the skirt, each one is an individual bag. Shears, cutting shears, razors, distress, all for the bottom. And then of course, the top is this kind of homage and ode to the era. Cafe lived in the later 1800s. So this dress is a beautiful combination of 4 different designs. And then on the very back of the dress, it represents for all females. We have the bustle, which was very common then. But we have the dress, and as you will see, I like to use found objects in my work. So some of these will be safety pins, clothespins, again paying homage to Cafe as a seamstress and laundress. Here with the work, tiers and tiers of the actual bags to create the skirt. You'll see the corset as well that represents those constraints that many of us as females have to endure, whether it's a glass ceiling or perception or this illusion of scarcity that we face when we are extraordinary beyond measure, and we're keeping this whole thing going, honey. But so this is what she has. I often use the twine. The twine is to honor our beautiful indigenous sisters and brothers. Oftentimes you won't even recognize twine as in a piece or in a situation, but it's super strong and it's always there. The burlap is what I use to represent people of color. It's resilient, and sometimes even when you fray it with a weapon, a knife, or your hand, it just gently bows and gives. And for the most part, in my experience, I hope yours as well, people of color, no matter what they endure, they gently just curve to it. I think that is just something that we've had to pick up to survive. I'm looking forward to a day where it won't have to be the case. This necklace is here. It's her version of adornment. In many of the photos that you'll see during this time, the latter part of the 1800s, they have those necklaces. It's a way to adorn their necks, but hers is different. These are actually little wooden spheres meant to represent the units of measurement that help to kind of facilitate the slave trade. So for those who are familiar, people would bring those to West Africa and the southern tip of Africa, and they would take one of those, it was more of a metal form, and one would represent one gentleman, or it could represent one woman and 2 children. So I often, when I do my talks, I wear those. I'm not wearing it today because it's about reclaiming, but I often wear those as a reminder to me that people were traded just like that. They were traded for sugar, for all the things. The first quote unquote known slaves that came to the East Coast, to Virginia, were actually traded because the other ship was getting low on food. So those 19 or so persons, the first recorded Africans to our country here, were actually brought here because the other people got hungry. And millions of slaves were brought to the southern tip of our country to farm rice. Rice is originally from Africa. Again, hunger plays a very big role, symbolically and realistically, in this whole thing. So when you move over here, we're now honoring her trades and the things that she learned. We have the cast iron skillet that was very similar and very customary during this time. We also have beautiful pieces of sage where we're choosing to honor this space and make it a sacred space. We have the sewing machine. We have the pictures, again, focusing on libations, the connection of community, the connection that we all share together, regardless of ethnicity. We all share this connection. This is a piece called I'll Fly Away. There are small little pieces here meant to represent butterflies. It is a beautiful homage to the ancestors and an homage to our beautiful daughter Zoe, who's 6, who, when reflecting on the passing of her grandfather last year, right before Thanksgiving, she said, I believe that people who pass away turn into butterflies. And it was something because I had been researching African folklore, and there are really strong stories going back years and years and years about how life was so hard for persons who were enslaved that they would, while singing the Negro spiritual, would often talk about being reborn into nature as butterflies, as birds. You know, I'll fly away. That's the whole thing. So that's what this piece is. The blue burlap is meant to represent the sky and the intertwining of all these things together. These are books that evoke energy of the times. Staged here particularly, we have a small drum, of course, because the rhythm of the heartbeat is the rhythm of the motherland, and we are all connected. This piece is a piece called The Offering. It is a bust of a woman of color against the flag. And the flag I use in all of my digital pieces dates back to the year before the Emancipation Proclamation to represent an ideology and an energy and to reclaim. These ancestral flowers at the very bottom are meant to kind of shroud and cover and anchor up this being, because for many women, you know, the offering is perceived as being our body and all things physical and surface, and there's so much more to what we hold dear and bring into this space. Not to minimize those things. This table is a small side altar with local herbs and all the things, thread, needles, pins, table, beautiful handmade adobe blessing bowl, and fabric. We have the wash bin, because I'm quite certain for the first 2 years of traveling with the military as a laundress, she washed many a uniform. And this represents where we are in our country. This is my reclaiming of where we are in our country. If you watch the news would have you believe that everyone is rooted in this old ideology, that only some people have value and others are property or to be suppressed or oppressed. But I choose to believe that by having really beautiful, meaningful celebrations and engagements like this, we are lovingly creating resistance and lovingly shifting energy to a more perfect union. So all these pieces are ancestral fabric from my travels. I travel quite a bit with my work, and you will actually see, again, the twine. This red that represents that good old boy energy that I grew up with, that still exists. Also the gingham of the dresses I used to wear as a little girl in the hot of the Louisiana summer, honey. Lord, you walk outside, it's like someone just threw heat in your face. It's like, did I just shower? Where did it go? She knows. My daughter's always talking about it. It is hot, isn't it, baby? You acclimated to Colorado. So all of these represent that, the energy. The backing, again, burlap, consistent in the pieces. It's meant to be frayed, almost as if a map of sorts. We chart the path. We choose the direction. Even when we don't choose our journey. The final piece I'll share with you is a piece that was created specifically for today. And whenever I do a show, two things happen that are dependent upon the actual show. So while the work will be created beforehand, the altar that anchors the show is always done the day of. So I bring in all the materials, and this is not created until I sit in the space and feel the energy. This building was constructed in what year, Al?
Oh, goodness. It began in the 1880s and took, honestly, about a decade to finish in sections.
I feel you. Okay. So this building was created while Cafe, if those dates align, was actually living in Trinidad. Which is significant. So feel the energy of that, of this adobe all around you. Feel that energy. So I wanted to come in this space, and I took about an hour just to create that space and just refresh with herbs for today. But this piece, the final piece of each of my shows when it travels, is a piece that is based upon my experiences and the energy I felt during the show. This was a 3-week installation, so it was a temporary installation that will be shifting today. But as a result of all the things that I got from you, the energy, the prayers, all the things, the notions, the revelations about Kathy and her experience, new data, information, it informed this piece. Everything down to how I interact with the people who helped to facilitate the exhibit and bring it to life. So what you'll see is a jacket. So for persons of color, anytime you got a chance to reconnect with family or share or do these things together, you typically would invest in two things: shoes, if you have the good fortune to have shoes, and your jacket. So we are giving Cathay a jacket, and it's a snazzy jacket if I do say so myself, and it's created from burlap. So I'll show you the front. This is the front of the jacket. And I created burlap flowers in a similar fashion as those. That's about 67 flowers on that dress, hand done. We did flowers here, but we do them in lighter tones. Again, sweeping energy to the right? Not focusing so much on the past, honoring it, holding it, space for it, but moving to the forefront. So these are mimicked here in this piece in the center of her dress, anchoring her. And then we also have branches and locally sourced flowers right here. We're giving her those flowers. We're not waiting for someone else to honor her. And in so many seasons of life, you can't wait on anyone externally to honor what you have going on. You simply have to shift energy and choose. And the back is the special part. I'm gonna be super gentle with her. It's really touching me, honey. For those who know me, you know I am a crier. I am not in denial. I feel very deeply, and I know it's a privilege to do this work and to share with you all today. So as a culminating piece for this show, for this release, this blessing ceremony, this is moving forward and healing backwards. That's the title for this piece. And it just represents all that Cathay had to endure and the journeys that we are all navigating. These are meant to be viewed as bow and arrow, which was a beautiful practice, not just for our Native brothers and sisters, for many people from where I grew up in the South. And it represents three different versions of you. It represents the version that has already passed, your history. It represents where you are in the present. And then it represents the part of you in your heart, your spirit, that can transcend if you give yourself permission to do so. And you honor every aspect of your journey. It's anchored by the handmade flowers, by the burlap, which is consistent in the work, which represents working fabric, because burlap was created in this region. Denim was in this region. And also the few pieces of that old ideology that frankly probably will never go away in our lifetime. But we can hope that the energy of the indigenous brothers and sisters, beautiful people of color, and kind and loving, like-minded allies, fueled by a strong, you can do it attitude and energy and movement, will shift this thing. So, that's our show and our ceremony. And I'd like to thank you for sharing. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Feel free to walk up and experience this exhibit as it ends today. Blessings, everyone.